This is lesson 4.5. You use models to multiply a decimal and a decimal. And our learning intention is I can use grids to multiply decimals. So this whole entire lesson, you'll be multiplying a decimal and a decimal, not using the standard algorithm, but using the hundreds grid. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to color in a grid correctly to help you multiply a decimal and a decimal. Let's go look at our example number 1. It says find the product. Use the grids to prove your answer. Okay, well, let's go and find the answer first, and then let's use the grids to prove our answer. We know that we can imagine that 2 is just a 2 and that 9 is just a 9. So 2 times 9 would be 18. And then there's going to be one number behind the decimal, 2 numbers. So our answer is going to be 1800s, or 0.18. Now let's go and prove our answer. To do the grid, you can choose 2 colors. If you are just using a pencil, it might be a little bit harder, but it's still possible. So you want to color in the first decimal, which is 2/10, which is 20 hundredths. So here's Mr. Luke coloring 2/10, or you can say 20 hundredths. Because if you want to, you can add a 0 behind it, and it makes 20 little squares. There it is. Now you're going to do the same thing with the other number, which is 9. You're not going to go vertically again. You're going to go horizontally, so it crosses over, it overlaps each other. So now I'm going to do 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, and 9/10, or you can say 90 hundredths, either way. So let's go and do a recap. My yellow is going to be my first decimal, which is going up and down. And then my green, this is my other decimal number going sideways, horizontally. You want to crisscross. A lot of kids will go up and down for both, and that's not how you do it correctly. Now, to figure out our answer, you want to look at the area that has both colors overlap, which is going to be right here. This green part you're going to ignore. You're not going to really worry about that. And this little 2 yellow you're going to ignore. You're only going to focus on the ones that are overlapping each other, and that's your answer. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. And as you can tell, our answer was 1800s earlier, and we just proved it by using the grid. There are 18 little squares that are both green and yellow. Let's go try the second one. Here it is. Let's go and first prove it. I'm going to prove on the side. It is going to be 19 times 4. 9 times 4 is 36. 4 times 1 is 4. Add 3 makes 7. So I know it's 76 with one number, 2 numbers behind the decimal. So I am going to put 2 numbers. It'll be 0.76. So I should have 76 squares that are shaded in. 76 out of 100. That's why it's called 76 hundredths. Now let's go ahead and do it with the grid. Here it is. So I need to shade in one hole. I'm going to do yellow. One whole grid first, because it says 1.9. So I know that that's one hole with 9. So 9/10. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. So that all it is, I did the first number, which is the 1.9. So that's one hole, represented on the left side, one hole, and then 9/10, or you can say 90 hundredths on the other side. I am going to switch colors now. I'm going to do the other decimal, which is 4/10. And then I need to go sideways this time, because I went up and down for the first one. So you want to do it for both of them. So that's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and 4/10. So I did 4/10, or you can say 40 hundredths, across both grid. If you have 3 grids, you will go over 3 grids. If you have 4 grids, you go over 4. If you have only 1 grid, you go over 1. In this case, I did for both because I'm multiplying the 4 with the 1 whole, and I'm also multiplying with the 9/10. At this point, I'm going to ignore anything that's just one color. So like this part here, I would ignore because that's just one color. This is just one color, I'm going to ignore. And these on the side, I'm going to ignore. I'm just going to look at the ones that are both green and yellow, which is going to be this area right here. Now if you want, you can count it singly by doing 1 by 1, or you can tell there's 10 there. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40. I know that's 40 there. And over here you have all the way up to here, so you have 9. So you have all the way here to there. That's 9, but then you have 9, 18, 27, 36. I know there's 36 because there are 4 rows and each one has 9 because this last row does not count. So I know this would be 40 plus, and on this side it would be 36. And if you add 40 and 36, you have 40 on the left side, and you got 36 on the right side, and guess what you have? You have 76 hundredths, and we've just proved our answer. So as a recap, just make sure you're shading it incorrectly and overlap it, and then just count the squares. I took a little bit of a shortcut to count the squares because I didn't want to count them one by one. I just did some multiplication to find the area of the left side, which is 10 times 4, which is 40. On the right side, it was 4 times 9, which is 36, and added them together. So these are the 2 areas that I was focusing on. Alright, moving along, we are now on number 2. It says find 2 numbers that you can multiply to get a product of 4/10. Write the numbers in the second box. Well, here it is. There's all these different options that you can choose from. You want to find 2 numbers that when you multiply them, you will get 4/10. And you think about it, it could also be 40 hundredths. So, think about your math facts. What times what gives you 40, right? And I know that is 8 times 5. So, I know it's going to be 8 times 5, but if you multiply 8 times 5, that's 40. But you want 40 hundredths, so you will want 2 numbers behind the decimal. So, let's go and try a few numbers. Let's go and try 0.5, which is this guy. I know that has to be multiplied with an 8. Well, if I just do just an 8, that would be 40, but then it would be 1 number behind the decimal. I need 2 numbers behind the decimal. So that won't work. Let's go and erase the 8. Let's go and try to put a new number there. Why don't we do 0.8? If we do 0.8, that will work because I know that 5 times 8 is 40. And then you have 1 number, 2 numbers behind the decimal, which makes it 40 hundredths. And then later on, you can erase the 0 if you like. And if you think about it, it's going to match up to your product. So those would be the 2 that I would choose from. I would choose the 5/10 and the 8/10 because when you multiply 5 and 8, you get 40. And then a tenth and a tenth make a hundredths. And that's the one that you want. So think about your math facts. If you get 0.36, it's probably going to be like a 9 and a 4 or a 6 and a 6. In this case, I knew that 4 is the same thing as 40, so I knew that had to be an 8 and a 5. Because I know the 9s are useless, because the 9s are not going to help me get a 40. Because 9 times 5 is 45, so it won't help me at all. I know the 1 is also useless here, because the only way you get 45 or 40 with 1 would be another 40. So I knew it had to be 8 and 5. On our last one, it says a rectangle has an area of 0.24 square meter. What is one possibility for the length and the width of the rectangle? Tell why. So let's see. A rectangle has an area of 24. What is one possibility for the length? Well, if you think 24, there's a few ways to get 24, right? So let's go and zoom out. So here's one way you get 24. You can get 8 times 3. Now you can't just do 8 times 3 because 8 times 3 is actually 24, but you need 0.24. So you need to have the decimal right there. So you need 2 numbers behind the decimal. So all we need to do is just make it like this. We'll make it 0.8 times 0.3.
Use one of their computers.
So then if you think about it, here's 8 times 3, which is 24. And then you have the 1, 2, which makes sense. So one possibility we'll be using 8/10 times 3/10. Another possibility would be to do 6 times 4. But then you can't really do 6 times 4 because that would just be only 24. It has to be 0.6, which is 6/10, times 4/10. And that will give you 24 hundredths. So that's your second possibility. The last one can be, you have another possibility, which is going to be 24 times 1, but then it has to be 0.24 times, actually not, it will be 2.4 times 1, because you want only 2 numbers behind the decimal, so it will be 2.4 times 0.1, and that will give you 24, and then that's what it would be like, because then you have 2 numbers behind the decimal. Now part B says, is there another pair of dimension that would work? Explain how you know. Well, I gave you 3 different pairs that wouldn't work. Any of those will work as long as you have the correct decimal number, and it has to be 24.